Okay, guys, we are back here with OCD Mikey, the man himself again.
What's up?
Today's video is going to be a video that him and I have been talking about for quite some time now. And this video has to do with the controversy that we have been actually watching on YouTube with regards to reviewers who do not have a dedicated room to perform, whether it's measurements or just simply the evaluation of audio components. I think Mike has been very, very candid with me behind closed doors as far as how he feels. And I do have my opinion as well with regards to this subject matter. So for now, subscribe, hit that like button, continue to support me. And of course, Mikey's channel the link will be in the description below. So you'll get to see what his channel is all about in case you do not know who he is. All right, Mike. Well, there has been a lot of talk about this particular subject. There was a guy, I can't remember, you know his name, right? You mentioned him to me. The video of the guy who talked about bookshelf speakers, his design, and how he doesn't feel comfortable sending his design of speakers into rooms that are not prepared to showcase the full potential of his speakers. I thought it was an actual great video. Sorry, I don't really have the permission right now to put his content, okay? But I just failed to message him, to be honest with you, to see if it was okay. But anyway, he basically said that he has a problem. He was calling out reviewers. I believe that's the name of the video, calling out all audio reviewers. He has a problem with people who review his product and they are doing this from a garage, from a kitchen, from a bedroom with plants and just bookshelves everywhere. And it's just a complete disaster. He feels that he spends way too much time designing, testing, or perfecting his speaker in order to just maximize, in order to show us what he's capable of doing. And he feels that sending a speaker like that to a subpar room just completely mitigates his efforts. Okay. I am, as you can see behind me, I am all about showing what you have. Your resume is behind, right? Mike's is the same way. You don't see it right now.
I'm about getting a suntan.
Right now, you're about getting a suntan. But you guys have seen his channel. He has his rig. I visited his rig, which I completely loved, and I was very vocal about that. And I have my own rig behind, of course. And so, Mike, tell me about your thoughts. I'm curious to hear what you think about these reviewers that simply review equipment in rooms that perhaps might not be optimal.
Yeah, so in that respect, it reminds me of, okay, before I started my hi-fi channel, OCD Hi-Fi Guy, I was sitting with the speaker manufacturer at the show, okay? And here's what happens as a exhibitor at the show. You set up in this room that's near impossible to set up in almost all the time, right? You've got air conditioners making noise and all sorts of crap, and it's just a horrible, you got to do it right away, man. You've got 1 day, 24 hours, sometimes less, to set up a rig and tune it, okay? Many times that takes weeks in a normal situation where you're tweaking with the subs and what have you. So we've got to do it in rapid fashion, and then we sit there and we wait. People come in and tell us they want to play this, they want to play that, but really we're waiting for these reviewer guys to come into the room and we step all over our what to try and accommodate these reviewer guys that come in. And one day we're sitting there going, first of all, there's no we don't get any ROI on this show, on these shows. How it's not bringing us any new blood. What are we doing this for? Well, really, we boiled it down to, we're doing this because we want these reviewers to come in our room and talk about it. Okay, well, but it's not even a review. It's just a show report, which means they walk in, they're going to give a couple of minutes in a little blurb on a show report and say, oh, I went into this room and that sounded very nice. They have this new thing out, and just a couple sentences. And we're like, man, we go through a lot of expense, and we start to ask ourselves, who are these guys that are coming in? Okay, that we're all just up, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, to kissing their ass. And it's like, these, what's their rig like? What do these guys have in their room? What's their listening room like? What do they know about hi-fi? Because they're walking around holier than thou. Okay, they walk around, they've got little people trailing them, and oh, that's that guy, that guy, and they're walking around like royalty, and we're like, who are these guys anyways? We started to do a little background searching, and it turns out a lot of them are in New York apartments, small, overcrowded with stuff. It's really no real environment to have a real audio system, and a lot are very small systems. They're not even big grandiose systems, yet they're reviewing things that are much higher than what they use. Granted, they are beautiful writers. They can write something that is like, poetry. It's beautiful. But what do they know brass tacks about hi-fi? And that's what we started to ask ourselves. We looked at each other and said, you know what, dude? You and I are far more qualified to review hi-fi than these jokers that come in that are just, walking around like royalty. That was the start of OCD Hi-Fi Guy. I said, you know what? I'm going to start to show what I know and talk about it. And it caught on. And the next thing you know, here we are, Jay, talking about this stuff and looking back at what's the real meat of this whole thing. And then we have the online reviewers, okay? And online reviewers are enthusiasts that just have popped up. Many of them, they're new. That's okay. That's fine. But then we ask ourselves the same thing. What kind of rig do these guys have? They're talking about things. One that comes to mind is a customer, because a customer told me, he came to me and said, oh, Mike, I'm thinking of buying the Kinky studio amps. And I said, why? And he said, because I saw this video where the guy on the video, he's a reviewer, online reviewer, said that they sound just like the $65,000 Nagra monoblocks.
The 65, okay, hold on. How much are these amps?
Three grand, I think, 3,500 maybe.
$3,500
made in
amp.
China. Made in mainland China.
Hold on. So he's saying he saw a reviewer online, which I'm curious to see who that is. And that guy reviewed amplifiers that are $3,500 made in China, and they're besting $65,000 Nagra HD amplifiers.
Or they sound like it, like equal to, just as good as. So my first question was, does he have those monoblocks in his room? And then he said, my customer, again, this is hearsay, so secondhand, it could have changed. He said, well, he said that he heard it at a show, or he's heard them before. So the guy's going from memory of something previous in history, back in his memory about what something sounded like at a show, and now comparing it to a product right now that's $3,500 from mainland China. I'm like, okay, I don't think the guy's had the $65,000 monos in his rig. I highly doubt it.
So here's my concern with that. As far as I know, unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, I am the only guy on YouTube right now slinging caliber, that kind of equipment, like the Nagra, 65. That's fair to say, right? I'm the only guy who has been showing constantly that level of equipment. So if this guy is doing the same thing that I'm doing, reviewing equipment of this level, okay, and he's had the Nagras in his room, and he's bringing those $3,500 amps, okay, he might, you know what, I'm gonna listen to what he has to say, and it will make me think for sure. But if he's never put those on his channel, and he heard him in the corner of some audio room at a show, and he's heard him and he's never lived with him, that to me is so disqualified as far as his opinion, because we all know shows are not really a correct representation of what a system can do.
And here's the thing, there's like nothing wrong with the guy giving his opinion. Okay, he's perfectly entitled to give his opinion on what he remembers as the sound. That's fine. But I think what the message is here to our viewers right now is that you need to think about the context and the delivery from the source. What is the provenance on the source of the information that you're receiving? Mm-hmm. You must question that. Who is this guy? What are your credentials? What do you have in your rig? Did you listen to those other things in your rig? Or are you going from memory? So everybody can say whatever they want. It's free world, whatever. It's cool. That's just people's opinion. Okay. But as consumers of this content, you need to ask yourself, what's the background of these people that are giving me this information? And then ask yourself, what would be in it for them to, like, and I'll make something up, okay?
Yeah.
Like, let's say that $3,000 manufacturer gives monoblocks to that person and lets them keep them and then sell them, or keep them and do whatever. That's a bias, okay? At that point, you've got allegiance to whoever gave you something free. Yeah. So you need to ask yourself that. Now, it's still okay for the person to say whatever they want. If they received items for doing that, that's fine. They're promoting a brand that they got compensation for it. It's still fine. But as a viewer of this material, you want to ask yourself, what's the background here? Does the guy use what he's pitching? I use everything I pitch. I use the Rolands. I use the Nat Audios. You know, you use what you're showing. That's your rig. So consumers of the content have to ask themselves, you have to be skeptical. And I hate to say it that way, but it's the truth in the world. You have to be skeptical of the information that you got and ask yourself, what's the background? What's the backstory? Where is this info coming from? And what is that person's motivation potentially?
You know,
my motivation is to sell you the products that I'm pitching.
Right.
That's easy.
And you've been vocal about that. And you have been very vocal about that. Everybody knows that. You know, you've never hidden that. My thing is, I just wish the viewers, subscribers, followers, whatever you want to call them, I wish that they kind of understood things from the perspective that you just presented, which is, here I am following a guy who's talking about stuff that I never saw in his room, who is reviewing from what seems to be at least a room that's worse than the viewer's room oftentimes. And he's giving an opinion about gear that he doesn't seem to have lived with or put his hands on or actually
paid for.
Right, like nothing. Like, I just wish the viewers saw those things. Like, I am just completely baffled by how they are like following people that talk about things that they have absolutely zero qualifications to talk about. And, you know, and me, again, I believe I'm still, and I've looked at this hard today again, I'm still the only one on YouTube doing shootouts with some of this stuff. I'm the only YouTube guy that shows. I just flew to Puerto Rico. I just set up a client system in one of the most mind-boggling rooms I've ever been in. I showed what I could do, doing my connections, testing, you know, setting up the speaker, show what I was able to do. And I'm here constantly grinding, you know, behind me, doing and bringing some of the best components out there, at least for me, right? So I'm showing my skill set, I'm talking about it, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And yet I'm still very confused oftentimes by how these guys have acquired 100,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers, 300,000 subscribers.
I'll tell you.
And you know, hold on, but let me finish my train of thought before I forget. Hold on, let me finish it. And these guys with that kind of following are cashing checks. They're making money from YouTube, big money. And they don't have the money to invest in the room and pay for a nice room and build a better setup, actually ramp up their content. I just don't understand. Like, I'm not making anywhere near the money they're making, right? Nowhere near the money they're making through YouTube. And my room is better and I have better things in here and they can't really bump it up. Like, I see them in the same environment constantly.
What I think it boils down to is it's a level of importance for hi-fi in their life. You know, if it were more important, they would be buying it. You know, so that's another good point for viewers to assess how real, how they can relate to us. My buyers have rigs like mine, you know, so they want to buy from somebody that also has a rig of their caliber or at their means. So they're gonna listen to somebody that has a rig at their means, just like your Puerto Rican customer. You know, they're not gonna buy, but see, from the guys that don't have that clout or have that experience. But I think to go back to what you were saying is you don't understand how people just you have to realize most of our clients are, you know, 50 plus, okay, in
Yeah,
age.
that's fair.
And at that generation, we were raised to trust the information from the media, and just trust it, because at one point there was integrity with it. I mean, a lot more integrity. There was never probably 100% integrity, but there was a lot more. So we could trust the news, we could trust the media. And if you imagine somebody coming new into anything, okay, let's say I want to learn about rifles. I want to learn about sniper rifles or some shit like that, whatever, cameras, anything. What am I going to do as a guy that knows nothing, who doesn't have anybody I can consult with right now? I don't know anybody. The first thing I'm going to do is go online and try and find the camera magazines, right? Yeah. Or I'll go to get a magazine. I don't do that anymore, but some people still buy the paper print magazines. And I'm going to try and figure out what's good from that information. I would really need to be aware to question the person that wrote that, and to go think about the background and I wonder if this camera maker or this rifle maker is paying this magazine for the advertising, and that's why they're talking well about this. Mm-hmm. You know, I was buying something the other day and I asked the guy, does this manufacturer pay for that? Because he said, oh, this one's got a really good review. With something unrelated to hi-fi. This thing got a really good review and the guy really liked it. And I said, is he paid by this company to do that, to advertise or anything? He said, oh, no, not at all. So it's like, okay, so that's the first thing I want to know, because that's a bias right there. So people need to be more aware. Okay, you know, it's a rude awakening, but you can't trust what's on the evening news. Whatever they're saying is not the real story. It's what they want you to think for political reasons. You know, this is my opinion. It's the same with products that you read for political reasons. They're in the part of the audio mafia, as Mark Levinson coined it. If they're getting paid and everybody's making money off these brands, they're going to talk great about those brands because it brings them the most amount of money. They're not going to talk about the brands that are smaller, that can't sell 10,000 units a month. They need brands that can sell 10,000 units a month, because when they write about it, everybody goes cuckoo and buys that stuff. And many times they're scratching their head. So I guess the point of what we're talking about is question the provenance of the information you get. Be skeptical about who is telling you the information, and consider their background, if they have a motivation, what that motivation is, if they're open about it, and what their experience level is. What kind of rig do they have? Am I going to be able to talk about if a Ferrari or a Porsche when I've never owned one? I've owned a Porsche. I've never owned a Ferrari. I'm not qualified to talk about Ferrari. I can talk about what the thing looked like sitting there. I can talk about what it looked like when I heard it rip past me. But if I've not driven it or owned it, you know, I'm strictly limited on how valuable my information is about it.
So I just got a call right now. They told me the person that said that about that we were talking about, that we were questioning as to whether he should be given these opinions on the Niagara amplifiers against the $3,500 amplifiers that you talked about. I think his name is Jay.
It's not whether they should be giving the opinions, because they can give the opinions. That's fine.
Right.
But people have to be aware of who's giving that opinion, what their background is.
Yeah. So his name is Jay. I think he's in Canada. He's an Asian guy, younger guy. I've seen some of his stuff, some of his content as well. I like what he does. I do.
Sure. Totally.
And, he did say that also something which I'm going to now ask you the opposite. He did bring up an interesting point, which I was just told, which is, let me ask you then, if you're saying as a speaker manufacturer, look, we're not going to send you a product in for review because your room sucks. Let's just say that's what it is, right? Your room is not ready for my stuff. Then he said something along the lines of, do you disclose this on the manual of your product, that your speaker needs to be in a perfect room, in a perfect environment, which many of us do not have?
Totally good point.
Very good.
The guy who was speaking with him, the unmentioned guy, on the video, there was another guy that has another channel, and he made that point. He said, look, I'm going to play the devil's advocate, and most of us don't have rooms. We have regular rooms.
That's true, though.
So that is an excellent point, and that is true, man.
who has a perfect room?
Yeah.
Hardly anybody, man. It's a pain in the ass,
I agree.
and it's a good idea and you'll get the most out of it, but your product shouldn't, in my opinion, have to rely on that in order to sound good. In order to sound its best, okay, but it should be able to sound good in a myriad of different types of rooms. That's just my opinion.
It should. I agree with that. But I do understand how some brands, I'll give you a perfect example. Magical speakers, when I had the M6s, I mean, I can definitely tell you that speaker needs, in my opinion, again, based on this short amount of time I've owned it, it needs a room. It definitely needs a room. You got to be mindful of the walls. Not that it doesn't matter for other speakers. Yes, the room matters for just about any speaker, but I do believe there are some speakers out there that just simply need the right space to sing.
They're more room dependent. Yeah.
They are more room dependent. They need the ability of, for you to have the ability of having enough room behind the speaker to push him out into the room, away from the walls, that you have to have that ability, and that could be the design of the speaker. I believe there is a brand, I want to say it was Harbith, and that I was told Harbith actually builds the speaker on purpose, as far as like, they build them and they want them to be in rooms that are not perfect. They want you to have coffee tables. They want you to have all these things because they say that when they design the speakers, it's meant to go in a room that's not perfect. That's how they sound best. So I thought that was interesting. I never heard of such thing.
Well, look at Walsh Ohm. Walsh Ohm, an American brand, still made in New York. Totally cool. It's a 360-degree dispersion type speaker. So you put it wherever, and it doesn't necessarily have a tight sweet spot, but it fills the room and you put it wherever you want. Now there's another brand too that's meant for against the wall. I can't remember the name of it, but I've seen it at the shows and I was astounded by it. I sat down, I'm like, damn, this sounds really good for straight up against the wall. And they're meant for that. So as consultants, that's what we do. We recommend you, if you're in a living room where you can't pull the speakers out, we're going to recommend a speaker that goes against the wall. But we're getting off the subject. But yeah, so that is a very good point that Jay makes about the room. I couldn't agree more. You should be able to send your speakers out happily. Now, to the other guy's point, okay, about having to have a perfect room, he also made the point about the person's ears and their experience. What's their reference? That I think is.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's where I was going next.
Yeah, if somebody has little experience and they don't know how to listen, or they don't know how to really set speakers in the room, get them toned in, they could be out of the image and thinking, oh, this is not imaging. Well, it's like, dude, you're not in the image. You're too far back. So they need to understand how to set speakers up. So maybe we're concentrating on his room comment more than we need to, but maybe, I can't remember if he really pushed that or not, but he did make the other thing about the person's listening experience. And I think that's very valid.
The person's listening experience, it is so valuable. If you are following, let's say, a person that has an okay system, right? And he goes to a show and he's blown away by these systems that are $500,000. And he says, oh my God, that's the best I've ever heard in my life. It's really next level. It's everything that I wish I could have in my room, right? I've always said this. Of course, it's going to blow you away more than likely. Number one, you're not exposed to that level of sound all the time. So your ears are going to be like in overdrive, like, wow, oh my God, this is, and so if you are trying to get an opinion about a system that is, it's high price, it's a high ticket dollar item, it costs money, it's a cost no object money, a cost no object system, right? Make sure you get references from people who have been around these systems. To your point, you used to do a lot of trade shows. You've heard many of these systems. You are more than qualified to give an opinion about these systems. People that live with it as well, people that you can see, that you can actually fact check and say, this guy has that exposure. He would know if that sounds good or bad. I'm going to use myself as an example. Myself as an example. I've been to shows lately. The last 2 shows that I traveled to, Capital Audio Fest, and then I went to the Florida Audio Show, Expo. And the biggest, most expensive rooms for me were not the best rooms.
Never.
And I've heard, you've seen behind me the system that I've had in here in the past, multiple versions, right? And to me, they were not the best sounding systems. To me, I've always went back to the smaller rooms. I believe I had the Joseph Audio Room with transparent cables winning the show back in 2021 at Capital Audio Fest. And recently I mentioned the top rooms for me, and none of them were the expensive rooms. So the ultra expensive rooms, they're expensive, but they're not ultra expensive. So because of my reference point, I go and I listen. And when I hear that potential and I hear those drops of pure substance that really just make me move my feet and just take me in a whole different direction, and they literally transport me out of the room. When I feel that, that's when I know I'm in front of something special. So when they go around and they ask opinions, how was this room? Did you like it? And they come on their YouTube channel and they begin to say, oh my God, this is. And then I'm looking behind them and I see,
and you're like, of course it's great to you.
And I'm going to be looking behind them, and they are in what seems to be a library somewhere, because they have books everywhere behind them, and they seem to have speakers scatter or cables on the floor, and you're like, okay, so of course I don't blame you. It's going to blow you away, this level of system equipment. Yeah.
Now
you're right.
I might add. I'm sorry. Were you through with what you're saying?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say I might add. That and I don't know if you're going to use these or not, but we shared some photos that came up from some of the old dogs that write for the magazines.
Oh wow!
Highly regarded guys.
Yes,
and
I remember that.
We sent them back and forth, and these are guys like the big dogs, and we're looking at their paltry rooms and their. I mean, it's like, oh wow.
Here, let me put them up right now for the audiences to watch, so they have an idea of what it is. So these are some of the pictures you guys are seeing right now. Some of the craziness that Mike is talking about. He shares some of these with me. And you guys may not know, when you guys are reading a magazine review, these are actually the rooms behind the scenes that are evaluating components. Now, this is really what's happening right now that most people don't understand. A lot of these reviews that you read very passionately, that you subscribe every month and pay $10 a month or whatever it costs you to read, and that you are just 100% sold on, they are actually reviewing in rooms like what you see right now. This is their laboratory. This is how they believe.
You know what? I might and I hate to compare it this way, but I don't know any other way to compare the fantasy. So it's like a stripper. Okay, that's what these writers are going to create a fantasy. It's beautiful poetry. You're going to read it. You're going to be seduced by what you read. But there's no, when the rubber hits the road, it's not there at the end. You're not going home with this woman. You're not going to do, I mean, in most cases, right? Whatever. It's the fantasy thing. And guys go there. They throw money at it. There's no end. It's a fantasy of something. It's probably better that way, of course. But so some people like to be sold. They want to read all this prose and all this beautiful stuff and then buy something and be in a fantasy about it. But when the rubber hits the road and they need to connect to the music, what do they have? Are they going to be scratching their heads going, now the magic's not there. The fantasy, there's the magic. But once the rubber hits the road, the fantasy is dead now.
It's completely evaporated.
It's evaporated. Now, another thing I'd like to point out to your point about who you're asking. Here's a great example that just popped into my mind while you were talking. I went to a car show recently. I was looking at, beautiful cars at the Concours d'Elegance in Amelia Island. I was talking, the guy I went with, speaker manufacturer, very, very good at what he does, very smart guy. And he also is a journalist for automobiles. He has driven just about everything. He goes over to people's house. Here's my F40, go drive it. And he writes about these things. Dealers give him cars that he has for 30 days at a time. And then he writes and he takes photos and content for his, I think it's an Instagram now that he has going. I can mention him. It's Ryan Scott from Vapor Audio. And so I have a client who likes this particular brand of car. He loves it, man. He swears by it. He told me, Mikey, when you make the dough, you need to buy one. If you're going to buy, a $120,000 car or whatever, this is the one you need to buy because you get the most experience out of it, for driving. And now I asked Ryan about this car because I've heard this guy's pitched it so high. I said, Ryan, have you driven a blah, 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 blah? He said, yeah, absolutely. I had one. And I said, well, what did you think of it? And this is the kind of feedback that you get from somebody that is soaked in this stuff, that has a background. He said, dude, it's fine car and everything, but the ergonomics are horrible. There isn't one view when you're driving where you can see correctly to the gauges. You have to move or bob and weave around the steering wheel to get a perfect view of all your gauges. So it's kind of a cluster. It's hard to see things, and I did not feel that the ergonomics were right. The car was ergonomically compromised, and I thought that's very interesting because that would be important to me. I would want to be able to see all my things. I mean, if you're driving fast, especially, you want to have a good view of what's going on. So that is the difference between somebody that has experience and somebody that doesn't do this for a living, right? So they're going to see it a little differently. Someone's going to just be excited by the seat of the pants thing of this exciting car. Another guy's going to be like, well, I've driven every supercar there is, and this one, if I'm really going to look at it objectively, asks for ergonomics. I can't see the instrumentation. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much talk all the time about, who has credibility, who doesn't. I think obviously each person, each viewer needs to make up they have their own criteria. They have the ones that they like and they don't like, and that's fine. There's a reviewer out there for everyone. My thing is, my opinion with regards to the matter is, should you have a room if you are making a living off of reviewing components? Yes. If that is your job and that is your 9 to 5 and you're 100% cashing checks, YouTube checks, with 50, 100,000 subscribers, I believe you should have a dedicated room, because that's your operation. That is your office. That is, in my opinion, it needs to be part of that reviewer's, environment.
Or you just look at it and say, okay, it's one of those guys. He doesn't have a room. That's cool.
Right. So when you look at it and you think, well, my friend doesn't have a dedicated room. Yeah, but he doesn't make a living reviewing stuff. For him, it's a hobby. You are making money on this. You should have a dedicated room. Okay. Yeah. I know those dudes that have a lot of subscribers make money. I know they make a lot of money. I know they do. Believe me, I don't talk about this, but I know they make money. So they have no excuse to not go out there, partner up with, companies that do acoustic treatments, clean up their room, organize it in a way that begins to take the shape of a dedicated room.
I hear you, and I totally get your point, but I think people can do whatever the hell they want, but it's up to the viewer to suss that out. Yeah, right? If I just want to sit in my garage and talk about hi-fi, and I have a transistor radio, so
you know what I was going to do? People are
do that and they value what I have to say, then cool. But the viewer, I think, to your point, the viewer should be aware and just ask themselves, who's this person bringing this information and how valuable is it?
You know what I was going to do? Just to prove a point, I was actually going to do this video sitting inside my kitchen, and I was going to buy 2 bookshelf speakers on stands and put them right behind, and then just say, I'm here, I'm reviewing these speakers. They are great.
I've got a couple of Sonos in my kitchen, man.
I could see 2 bookshelf speakers right behind that bench you're sitting on stands. And you're like, awesome speakers. I heard them. They blew my mind. The sound stage is phenomenal. Oh my God. So, it's because people are not paying attention to that. They don't look at the room. They don't look at the location. They don't pay. That goes right over their head. People
they're zoomed in on the product.
It goes right over their head. And so for me, it's like, I don't have a problem if they are, reviewing stuff. All I'm saying is, it's like getting a camera or a microphone. Right now, look, you guys are watching me on a new camera that I bought to give you a better, view of my room, right? So what I'm saying is, again, especially if you're living off of this stuff, guys, I don't live off of YouTube. It doesn't pay my bills. I have a 9 to 5, okay?
Yeah,
And I'm
me
shooting
neither.
video content all the time on Saturdays and Sundays so that I can release this type of content on weekdays for you guys, okay? So I'm not 100% invested into this. These guys are 100% doing YouTube day in,
Well,
day out.
yeah, and that's another point that I've made before is, you know, determine if your person is a YouTube star, or if they're an audiophile, or if they're a system builder, or if they're just an enthusiast. They can be anything. It really
Yep.
doesn't matter. But just understand the context of how the information is coming to you, you know?
Yeah, it's just, you know what it is? It's sometimes I think viewers are using the reviews to kind of just get another reference point. They're not really exactly looking deep down and observing the surroundings of the reviewer. They're not really paying attention to all those things that matter. And
Yep.
when someone, and to your point, if someone comes on YouTube and says, this is the best system I've heard, right? They never really think along the lines of, well, before I believe what this guy just said, let me see all the stuff he's had. To your point, let me see where he's been. What has been the highest reference point of his? They don't really do that. Viewers don't think that way. They don't really process information. Their biggest
I'm
thing
gonna
is
sunburn out here, dude.
they don't really think of saying to themselves, who is saying this? Who is this guy to say this is the best? They don't.
Now here's something else that I just thought of too, that is also valid in this whole context, is the majority. Okay, when somebody has 100,000 viewers, 200,000 in their hi-fi, okay, the majority of those people are going to be regular people that are not audiophile weirdos like me or you, and they're just going to be regular people. So when they talk in their context of these little Kef bookshelves are the best thing I've ever heard, they're so awesome, that can be proper advice for people in a certain strata, if you will, or in a certain genre, you know, of regular people. So it's just different strokes for different folks. Different viewers bring different information for a different demographic of subscriber. You know what I mean? We cater to the higher end users, so we can't expect everybody to cater to the people that we cater to.
Yeah.
There's plenty that need to cater to people that are down, that shit, $300, $500 to them is you know, 500, I hope at least, is a week's work, you know, or something like that. And for those folks, you know, you and I are ridiculous. We're clowns, dude.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
we're
that's
like,
true.
they can't relate. So in many ways, these people, it makes sense for them to do what they're doing at the level they're doing, because they are speaking to the masses. We are speaking to the few. So the masses don't have the dough and or interest to even get us,
which is, to your point, which is why it's probably going to be very hard for someone like me to have 150,000 subscribers, because of the point, to your point, I'm not speaking to the masses. I'm not. And I'm aware of that. And I'm aware that I'm speaking to a specific type of person. I have a niche. I actually I am filling that gap that many other reviewers never bother to do. And it could be just because finances. It could be just because they don't want to deal with this. Plus, to keep it real, there is no freebies at this level. I don't keep the review sample. Let's give us a good review.
Let's put it this way, Jay. Most people that are buying at your level don't have the interest, or why would they go on YouTube, dude? Yeah. They've got much bigger fish to fry. They make more dough in a week than they would on YouTube in a year.
Yeah.
So it's silly for them to do it. Yeah. You're the one that stepped out there and said, you know what, I'm going to bring the big game through my crib and talk about it. And that's what you've got, man. That's your forte. You know, nobody does that.
Yeah, that's been the thing. And, you know, and I want to, you know, I want to definitely, you know, give my closing thoughts here is I just want for the reviewers, for those followers, to just take in consideration these points. Next time you're asking someone, what did you guys think? What did you think about this speaker or that speaker? Before you do that, take a look at their resume. Take a look at what they've had. If they have nothing that impresses you before you ask that question, I would say, don't even bother. Keep walking, keep going, find somebody else that can give you the right feedback. Assess your level, and then just, you know, take that to heart and understand it. You can still watch Jay and watch me to learn about the hi-fi and go, oh my God, those guys are nuts. And holy shit, this is what's at the top. Yeah.
but you know, it doesn't mean to discount. You just figure out where you are and what's valuable information. And
If you're
what's the
looking
person's
for
motivation.
there's a difference between looking for an opinion, which anybody can have, and it's a free country, and looking for a qualified opinion
Expert.
that actually has weight, that actually
point.
has
Good point.
substance behind it. That's what you
it's-
guys need to understand. You're
Yep,
looking
yep.
for
There's
opinions.
a line between expert and normal, or professional and just opinion or enthusiast. Enthusiast and expert, two different levels.
Decide what you're looking for, opinions or qualified opinions. That's what you have to decide as the end user. Okay, guys?
Order it up.
Thank you, Mikey, for your time. This has been a great opportunity here. If you guys like this type of content, maybe who knows, maybe I can put together a podcast of some sort. If you if you guys love this type of content, please leave me all your comments underneath and let me know what you think, okay? Because I'd like to continue, but it's got to be something that you guys really want to be a part of. Thank you for your time, Mike. Thank you again.
See you
Take care. Bye.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.